You can see that I have finished my rib, taken it off. Here's my waist yarn. Now usually you can bind off here. You could have done exactly what you did at the bottom. You could have just knitted 7 or so rows, but I reminded you of the advantage of not having a tight edge, a bound off edge to go over their disproportionately sweet little fat heads. They will howl and protest. Kids' sweaters have to be real flexible and loose at the top. So we're going to catch that down later and leave that flexibility there. I've also jumped ahead of you a little bit and completed my left shoulder seam. Just like the right shoulder seam, this is the trick. Make sure when you're working on it that you put the right sides together and stick it back. When you finish that left shoulder seam, what you have, now see what a squirrely little piece of knitting this looks like? It really isn't squirrely. You really have these two wonderful pieces, but the stockinette stitch roll. So that's why we have this diagram where you will have completed this whole center section. When you've completed that seam, you're going to come back and we're going to knit the right sleeve. We are now going to rehang our armhole edge, and I'll show you where we are at the construction diagram so you know what our sleeve looks like and where we're going to put it. This very first step is we're going to rehang this edge just essentially like we did around the neck, except these were both end stitches and live stitches, and along here we have merely end stitches. It really is a handsome edge. I mean, there's one line of stitches that goes on all the way along. You'll see it at the end. And in order to know how many needles over which to hang those ends, we have to consult our sleeve pattern. This is wonderful. Again, you're eliminating a sleeve. I mean, a seam, a sleeve seam. So if you cast on at the exact same time that you start knitting and attach it to that, you just knit away. That's why these numbers are in this order, because they are decreases. You are going to cast on 48 stitches, in other words, hang on 48 stitches, and then you're going to decrease 6, 12, 18, 24, 36, 42. You'll end up with 34 stitches at row 44. But first we have to find our edge. And as I told you, we're doing our right side today, but it really doesn't matter. Right and left. Right. Okay. We are going to do it with the wrong side facing it. This is just to help you get oriented, because sometimes when I'm working on one side of the frame or the other, it's easier if you're going the same direction I am. And because it's 48 stitches, I'm going to begin by putting green cards behind 48 needles. This is so much fun. Do you remember at the very, close to the beginning of Meet Your Bond, I told you about knitted stitches, stockinette stitches, being rectangles? And here it becomes relevant. Remember when you marked that armhole sleeve? You marked it at 33, and then you knit another 33 rows. What's this? We have 33 rows over which we are going to hang 24 stitches, going off in that direction. Why doesn't it come out kind of skewed? And that's because of that rectangle. If you rehang, and in fact I even had a student who brought me 3 sweaters that she didn't know what was wrong with them. All the sleeves were gathered, and that's because she had rehung every one of those rows. So I'm going to show you not only how to rehang this edge, but I'm going to show you how to painlessly, and that's the only way to do it, ease that edge. And look at this one, you can see. This is just one, and every one of the sweaters around here that's drop shoulder, and there's a lot of them, it doesn't look like there are any holes there. It's just a question of closing that gap. It closes naturally. Okay, this calls for the glasses, because we're going to start by trying to find our end stitches and where our markers are. I did not actually have you mark the very end stitch. Instead, remember I had you mark on row 33. It's actually the 33 rows above that are going to go into the armhole edge. So go 1 stitch above the one that you marked, and then out to that very end stitch. Now see what I did? I picked up the whole 2 end loops, just like you did around the neck, and hang it on the end needle. Your end needle should be number 24. Now we can go to the other end. Again, find our marker. If you follow it carefully, you'll start to see your knitting much better. If you can start to see stitches. There's 1 purl loop. Right above it is a loop coming out. But I don't want that one. I want the one right at the edge. Make sure I've got both loops. That's what I have. And then we have a shoulder seam. And I like to hang these rows or end stitches on either side of the shoulder seam. Now there's one stitch that's actually in the seam, and we're going to have to skip a lot of those stitches anyway. So sometimes I hang 2 consecutive stitches, or sometimes I hang these 2. But they're on either side. Okay, now notice this little bit of a swag. We have 33 to 24. You can go and figure that out by formula. There's a wonderful formula called the straight line decrease. Look at me, I'm tugging down on it and I'm kind of eyeballing it in. Well, which way should I go with that? I guess I'll go there. I'm roughly picking up the center, always the end 2 loops, and sticking them up. This works almost every time. Anyway, the formula is called the straight line decrease, and it will actually tell you how often. You have to cheat a little toward this end. You have to pull it downward because your knitting is shrunk up. It will tell you exactly how many stitches you have to skip, or I mean hang, before you have to skip one. And it's a wonderful formula, and I use it sometimes. It's called the straight line decrease, and it appeared in Key Plate Muse 8, which was a very early one, and it has since appeared in the best of. Now here I am, I'm trying to give you some other information, and I can't talk and do 2 things at once. The first collection, the best tips and hints, I think it was from 85, 86, 85. Volume 2 is 86, I think. Anyway, check in some of those early Key Plate Muse selections and you will find a straight line decrease. It will be a wonderful treat. But anyway, I used that formula, you know, on these armholes, and I figured out skip every 3rd stitch, every 4th stitch. It usually works out that you skip every 4th stitch because the ratio is about 75%. But I've gone to the trouble to figure it out, and my little experiment, I eyeball in this half and I do this half by formula, and you know that it almost exactly comes out the same. So I would like you now to rehang your armhole edge, wrong side facing you, very important. Make sure that you can find your end stitches. After you have rehung that entire edge, you're ready to try out the breaks all the rules, can't possibly work, but it does, and beautifully cast on. Or you'll push that back, and what the rules that you're going to break is, remember, you're going to lay your yarn into the open latches and close the latches, so that, oh, this would be a terrible place if you just try to work a regular cast on here, because those latches dig into the stitches that you have there, and it causes the yarn to split, and it jams, and it's most unpleasant. So try to rely on your memory to get you through that one, but of course you can replay the tape if not. After you have rehung your stitches, done your cast on row with a size 3 key plate, remember you're knitting a sleeve, join me again. Once you've completed that cast on row, make sure to move your row counter back to 1, that was your first row, and double check that key plate. You were just using a key plate number 2 to do the neck rib, and we want to make sure that you have put the right one in. And we're going to go to our pattern where we see we've cast on these 48 stitches, and we are going to decrease every 6th row until we get to 42, and then we are going to knit 2 rows straight. When your row counter reads 44, you may rejoin me. Make sure that you have 34 stitches. When you're doing your decreases, do the same kind of decreases as you did around the neck with a 2x1 transfer tool. Do a reverse transfer, meaning you go into the 3rd with the 1 prong, 3rd stitch, move it toward the outside and move both stitches in. When you get ready to do the cuff, rejoin me.